Hi, this is Damon Pistolka, host of the Faces of Business podcast, where we talk to interesting people about life and business. We cover their backgrounds, obstacles they've encountered, and find out what drives them. Along the way, our guests share nuggets you can use to drive your success. Reach me directly, DAMON at exityourway.us, or check out our website, exityourway.us, for more information. I hope you enjoy our show. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka, and with me today, I've got Kris Harrington from GenAlpha. Kris, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, Damon. I know we get to the pleasure of being together on some other things every week, and this is going to be really nice to just have a conversation one-on-one.
Yep. The other stuff we're actually we're structured a bit, which is good. So today we're just going to have a conversation about growing OEM manufacturing sales with e-commerce, and I'm really excited that as I've seen some of the GenAlpha stuff, and really it's an interesting and very practical way for OEMs to really rethink how they deliver information all the way through their supply chain into their repair facilities, distribution channels, down to the end customer. And I'm excited to talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me, the thing is, Kris, you're the co-founder of GenAlpha, and you're in manufacturing, you're working for some of these companies. Let's talk about your background and really how it came to be that you're working in some of these larger manufacturers, and then you decide to go out and start a e-commerce platform company.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. So where can I start? So, it's interesting. I was in the U.S. Navy. So I always say that I think that there was something calling me way back then, because I was a machinist mate in the Navy just for, a short time of my life. But it formed the building blocks, I'm sure, of helping me understand how things mechanically work. And while I've never been in service outside of the Navy, I did sell aftermarket parts. I sold large pieces of equipment. And I think just having that basic understanding and that foundation really helped me. I always say that manufacturing kind of chose me. So, and the story behind that is that I was an athlete in school, and I was a decent student, but I was a better athlete than I was a student. But I always wanted to impress my coaches by being a good academic as well. I think that was part that just really helped me do well in school. But there was a local manufacturing company, and I think they still do this today, that they give out an award each year to all the schools in our area, to one female and one male, and they call it the Athlete of the Year Award. And they base it on both your academics and your athletics. And they bring you in, they have a nice dinner, your parents get to come. And Coach K was the speaker.
Oh my goodness.
I played basketball, I played soccer, I ran cross country. So back then you could play 3 sports. I know it's a lot different for kids today.
Yeah.
But, that was really powerful for me, because that company was the same company when I came back out of the Navy. I gave my resume and I mentioned that I was the Athlete of the Year. And now I was back from the U.S. Navy, and they gave me a role, and I worked right there on the shop floor. So this was pre me going to get my education. I was a nontraditional student, went to Marquette University a little bit later in life. In fact, I completed my education in my 30s, but I had gotten all this life experience, you know, and when life was taking me to a certain point, I was realizing that I couldn't grow any further if I didn't have the education. So I really had this opportunity to work in many different areas within manufacturing before I went back and got my education. So I went to school, studied finance, so business with a major in finance. And Well, I should say I originally was thinking accounting, and I looked around the room one day at all the accountants and I said, no, I don't fit here. So I had to
Yeah.
switch to
Yeah.
finance. So my original role in a large manufacturing company that was servicing the mining industry, the name is Bucyrus International, was as a financial analyst. And I'm so thankful I came into the company as a financial analyst because I was taught to use the ERP system as a tool.
Yeah.
And not only was it my tool, but I was running reports and data for many different areas of the business. So I didn't start in one specific area where I was only providing information for them. I was providing detailed reports and having to analyze them to find the little nuggets of information that they needed so that I could help them in that area of the business. So it taught me, to analyze the data. In each area of the business, I started to learn very quickly what was important to those leaders in that business. So, the financial team wanted something, the COO wanted something else, the sales VP needed some other type of data. The aftermarket director was looking for another set of detailed data. So by providing the reports and looking through the analysis, I really started to get this business foundation that was pretty incredible when you start thinking about starting your professional career. And it was really from there, I think I had an opportunity to be useful in many different areas that people started kind of latching onto me and say, hey, would you like an opportunity over here?
Yeah.
And that was kind of my career inside Bucyrus. I moved from financial analyst to a product manager where I was analyzing a product within our aftermarket business. Then over in Canada, they needed a national parts manager for our entire Canadian operations. And I just raised my hand and said, I'll go. And what's interesting is when I arrived there, because I had come from the corporate office, they thought I had the answer to everything. So now I was the parts leader in Canada, but I had all these other areas of the business in Canada seeking my advice because I had come from corporate. So I just happened to fall into this space where I just had to keep being this resource, which allowed me to have this incredible experience.
And you interacted with so many different the pieces of the business because of that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And it really is the foundation that has helped me. And I promised to get to the story of how we founded GenAlpha. So, but
I've got some other questions before we get there, but this is great.
Yeah. So, I'm in Canada. I have this incredible leader in Canada who the way that he sells is to bring the entire team. So he would bring of course, our sales team, but he would bring the service team, he would bring our manufacturing team and our aftermarket leader all into a presentation with the customer. So together, we were selling the value of our business to this customer. He wasn't always alone trying to sell why you wanted to work with Bucyrus Canada. He was saying, you want to work with Bucyrus Canada because of these people and how they're going to support you after you buy our equipment. So I started learning from him how he presented the company and our services and how we could be more useful to the customers. Interesting, that was around 2007, 2008, where if you remember that time in history, there were a lot of challenges with supply. Similar to what's happening in manufacturing today. And what was happening for us is we were having a higher demand for our products and our lead time kept moving out. So the only way that I could solve and help my customers on the aftermarket side was to really plan with them. So I had to get into the planning and looking at how many hours do you have on your equipment? When are you going to need the parts? So that we could back in the lead time and make sure we were ordering in advance of lead time. It wasn't uncommon for us at periods of time to have 20-week, 25-week lead times. And if you're not planning, then the equipment is sitting or it's being used past its maintenance period, which runs the risk of other repair challenges. So I really got into that maintenance planning while I was in Canada. Go ahead.
The picture is coming together clearer and now. Thank you so much for that.
Good. So then I there was an opening back in the U.S. for the director of aftermarket parts for the globe. So I stepped into that role, moved back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is actually where I'm from. And now I had an opportunity to oversee the entire aftermarket and implement some of the ideas and things that I saw firsthand in how we were servicing the customers in Canada. So it was a really fun and interesting experience for me because I had moved into practical. And then when I came back to corporate, and as you know, you've been in business a long time, there are often challenges between corporate and subsidiary, right?
Yeah.
The subsidiary is saying, hey, I'm in front of the customer all day long. Corporate, you don't know what you're doing. You're raising the prices. I can't sell for that. Your lead times are too long. Well, we have a production challenge, So I lived one experience having come from corporate, came back and got to kind of bring that practical experience into the corporate environment. And I think it created a much more well-rounded team because I was able to share the ideas. We even refocused where we weren't just product managers for products, but now our product managers were responsible for a region of the world and helping them grow their sales. So their performance was measured not just by the performance of the product, but also the performance of the region. So that tightly aligned us with those regions and ensured that we were supporting them in the best way possible. So after that, had an opportunity to support the team in Brazil to win participate in a very large contract with the largest miner in Brazil. And really, this was so important to us that if we didn't win this business, we would have pulled out of Brazil because all of they were committing all of their business to one vendor. So we really had to put our best foot forward. I was part of that project team, and we ended up winning the business. Brazil was a very interesting experience for me, but that got me into equipment sales. So beyond just aftermarket, but now incorporating all the wonderful things I had learned in aftermarket, which a big part of the decision process for new equipment is how is that equipment going to be serviced? Mm-hmm. And I think I, with the support of the rest of the team, was really able to speak to that. And I would credit the leadership that I had back in Canada who taught me to see past a specific area. So, spent some time in Brazil. At that time, we started looking at a CRM system because we knew we needed a customer relationship management tool to track all of our opportunities, because one of the things that we had gotten very good at was trying to analyze our market potential and compare it to our actual sales and identify the gaps so that we could clearly focus in on the areas of opportunity. Now, we thought that a CRM system could help us get there faster because it would be a great way to track those opportunities throughout the world. So we went and we rolled out Microsoft Dynamics. That was the CRM that we had chosen. And right after Dynamics, we started thinking about e-commerce. And this was 2011 timeframe, 2009, 10, and then into 11. 11 is when the project got pulled because we were acquired by Caterpillar. We had been moving down a process to start implementing e-commerce at Bucyrus, but when we were acquired by Caterpillar, they had already been down their own process. And of course, they've already made investments in what they were doing. So our project got tabled. And we all went to work for Cat and got a really neat experience. And what was wonderful for me there, which I didn't realize how much value it would bring, is that Bucyrus was a direct sales model. So we sold through subsidiaries, but we sold direct to customers. Caterpillar, of course, is a distribution model. They work through distribution. So spending 2 years with Cat, I had an opportunity to understand how do you partner with your distributors to then sell to end users, and what is the difference in that relationship. And I can understand both the good things and the challenging things when you don't speak directly to the customer.
Yeah. That's something. So I've got a lot of questions here. So let's just get started. So first of all, let's go back a ways. So do you think being a non-traditional student in college, you got better grades because of that?
Absolutely. I knew what to focus on, and I wasn't going to put myself through it if I didn't do well. That was it. It was a deal with myself. It was all for myself at that point.
Yeah, that's cool. That's it. I did in my undergraduate degree that I got. It was coming out of high school kind of thing. But then when I waited a few years and did the graduate work, it was amazing how I magically got smarter because I actually applied myself.
Yeah.
And I was just curious when you were saying you're non-traditional, because it's right. I'm here to get focus in and get this done. So that's off the topic, but it's just something I was curious about. So when you had this experience, so this is cool. So Bucyrus is going direct to customer, you're doing that. And so what kind of equipment, first of all, were you selling? Because I think of mining equipment, I think of, I being around in the Midwest where I grew up in Wyoming and Montana, the big strip mining stuff. So what were they selling?
Well, initially we were selling shovels, drag lines, and drills. So your surface mining products.
So it's big stuff.
The big stuff, absolutely. And then we had several, acquisitions of our own while I was with Bucyrus. So we acquired the Terex mining division. So we got more surface out of that, some drills and the electric shovel. And then we acquired DBT, which was the underground business. And that's really when we became very attractive to Caterpillar, because now we had the full scope, surface and underground, for these large mining companies, billions of dollar companies who they do surface mining, they do underground mining. So we could offer something that no other company at the time could offer.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool because and you think of the service needs on something that absolutely positively has to run 24/7, forever basically, or have very planned and very short downtimes, is much different than someone's car at their home that if it doesn't run, it may not be a big deal for a few days,
That's right.
And in those 24/7 operations like that, it makes a huge difference. Just a little bit. So
uptime is critical depending on the mining operation and the ore that they were in. An hour of lost time could be $100,000 or more. So you didn't want to be responsible for not getting the parts to your customer on time to get their equipment back up and running, for sure.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So when you looked at the other thing that you were talking about that was very interesting is the direct model compared to the distribution model. So Bucyrus was selling direct to the end customer. What did you like and dislike about that model? And then we'll talk about the distribution model and some of the challenges in that.
Yeah. I personally love being customer facing. So I do think that when you get to spend time with the customer and understand their problems and challenges and be able to truly relate that back to your business and try to identify solutions, there's something special about that. And of course, there's a higher margin level when you're not working through a distributor. So the margins are different. When you do it well and you perform well, there's a larger opportunity for the manufacturer at that point. So I love to talk to customers. I love the customer facing aspect.
So the distribution model then, what were some of the challenges that put into play for you?
First I had to understand the Caterpillar way of business. And I did come to understand that for Caterpillar, their distributors are their partners and customers as well. So, the difference is that they get to hold them accountable to things that typically when you're a manufacturer, fighting to earn your customer's business, you're not holding your customer accountable. Whereas Caterpillar could hold their distributors accountable to certain things, and that would relate to discounts and support and other things that they would get. But I will say that the biggest challenge that we had was the different way in which the two companies, their product lines were. And let me describe that. So Caterpillar produces mining trucks, and they produce several different models, but they produce thousands of them. So their product line was high commonality with a larger turnover, which was very easy to have inventory to support the fleet that's operating. Okay. In the Bucyrus world, I think our largest year was that we produced 27 shovels in 1 year. Outside of that, we were producing, depending on the year and the demand in mining, you might have a 5 shovel year, a 15 shovel year, a 24 shovel year back to 18. And then that 27 was a high. So, and you have multiple models, again, depending on the size of equipment that's needed. So it's the size of the bucket. So the inventory planning for Bucyrus was very different than a planning on a Caterpillar side. And what we had to do was teach the distributors how to plan with the customer in the same way that we had learned to do it through all our subsidiaries, because essentially what we did is we divested all of our subsidiaries to the dealers, and that now they were responsible for that business. But they were used to this Caterpillar model where you needed the inventory and it was available, and there were trucks coming off the line always. So even if inventory was low in one area, production was always planning for. So there was this opportunity, whereas on the Bucyrus side, it was slightly different. And I think that was a challenge for everyone, because, the customers now had to go look at the dealer for support, and the dealer was still learning that product, the different product line, and understanding these challenges and ramping up with their own service personnel to be able to support this different type of equipment. So those were the challenges, to keep these customers in the uptime that you referred to earlier. Ultimately at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're keeping those production units running. And there's a big learning curve when you transfer that much product to a distribution network, and you no longer have that in-country service people available.
Yeah, that had to be quite a challenge. And it's a completely different model when I've got thousands of units compared to tens of units.
Yes.
And you can't just throw inventory everywhere around the world and you don't know it's going to sell. You got to strategically plan where it goes. And like with that low volume inventory, some of it's very, very, very expensive that you're not going to want to spend the money to keep inventory at every location either.
That's right.
Interesting stuff. Interesting
stuff
for sure. So all of a sudden, you're sitting here at Caterpillar one day and you just go, hey, let's go start an e-commerce platform for OEM manufacturers. I mean, let's talk about you came up with this idea and with some other friends, you co-founded this thing. So let's hear about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, what we had realized is that we were doing something special to help grow the aftermarket back in our Bucyrus days. And a lot of it was focused on solving problems for our customers. Mm-hmm. And we knew that one of the biggest challenges for customers was in planning, and it was the support between customer service and the business that that needed your parts and service support. So the equipment operator. So we thought, well, what if we could, and I will say that the other aspect that we saw as a challenge is that when a product left the factory, typically it was moving with a static manual that went with it, right? So in those days, for a shovel, we had 3 manuals that went. So it was 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and they were these very thick manuals.
Those old 6-inch thick things that they used to put with equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these things would ship out when the equipment shipped, and immediately they would be outdated because things are always changing back at the factory. Obsolescence, supersession, upgrades, changes, those things were very difficult to communicate back to the equipment owner. So what would happen is you'd go visit the mine and you'd sit with that equipment owner and you'd be planning, and they would pull out their parts book, and they had sticky notes everywhere within these parts book because they were crossing out part numbers, writing the current part number. And you might see 3 crossouts because that piece of equipment has been operating for 15 years. Yeah. So over the 15 years, they've got this old manual. It's sitting in one area of the business. So everybody has to go into it, check the manual when they're looking for things. So that was a big challenging area. So they would come in, say they needed a part quickly, and they didn't know the part number. And answering the question on what part number they needed was a big challenge. So we initially started GenAlpha with the idea of, let's improve that process. Let's make sure that equipment owners have access to the latest information inside the ERP related to the equipment they own. Because every piece of equipment is either identified by a serial number, a VIN, a model, something unique that they reference to say, this is the product I own. And then they start to describe the problem that they have to help identify what product they need. So we thought if we could take, and there was technology out there available to take bills of materials in 2D and 3D drawings and repurpose them, reduce the file size, introduce some hot spotting, so some interactive identification of the parts so people could see this visually. So basically turning that static manual into an interactive image where they can look at the 2D drawing and hotspot to it, or interact with a 3D model and just click on the parts within the 3D model, and it would tell them in the bill of material which part that is. And the cool thing about that is that through an integration to the ERP, you could get the latest update on the changes that have occurred to that part over time. So part number 4 might be legacy part 1, 2, 3, but the current part number is 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And through integration, we were able to quickly show that. So that was helping people improve the identification and solve that problem. And that was the first problem that we set out to achieve. And then once we did that, we recognized, okay, we can repurpose engineering bills and materials, 2D, 3D drawings. We can make this interactive. We said, well, we might as well have a button. We're already integrated to the ERP. Let's give them price and availability and allow them to add it to their shopping cart. So that's where e-commerce came in, is that we had this e-catalog with e-commerce built around it, but it was limited e-commerce at the time. And those were the problems we were setting out to achieve. We thought we could ease the process of doing business with a manufacturer by updating this process so that customers were no longer having to go find that one manual that's old and outdated, but rather go to a safe place online with their credentials, and just by entering their serial number or their VIN, get full access to the current bill of material. So that was the original goal and design.
Well, and in doing that too, you just made the support mobile, which is a huge deal, especially if you're working in construction or mining or something where you can be all over, and carrying a 6-inch thick binder with you out to a shovel that's 2 miles from the maintenance place or whatever you're doing, that all just adds to the complexity. Whereas a tablet or a laptop in the right setting is right there beside you to make sure that you found the right things. And then if you go beyond it and think about the maintenance and other things that you can help with that same kind of online data, it's a very powerful portal to provide to the end customer, which ultimately, as you talked about, the people around the table to help you sell, that system is another person almost sitting at the table that is a dramatic differentiator between you and someone else.
Yeah, it is the tool, right? It's a tool that is used by the end user, but there's so many other areas of the business benefiting from it as well. Customer service can use it, technical service.
Yeah.
Well, if a technical service person is standing out at the machine, just to your point, now they can pull out their tablet, be right on that piece of equipment, and things that we've introduced into the product are roles-based type of different roles. When you log in, you get to do different functionality.
Yeah.
So a technical service person might not have the authority to buy, but they have the ability to be at the customer's place of business, on that factory floor or in the mining pit, looking at the equipment, adding the things that they need to their cart under that customer's account number, and very quickly turning it into a quote that's now sent to that maintenance engineer.
Wow. Yeah.
So that when they leave the inspection site, your quote with the parts that you need for the repair is all in your email.
Yeah.
And now all that maintenance engineer has to do is maybe send it over to procurement and say, please get these on order. And through this roles-based login, the procurement person logs into the e-commerce site, sees the quote because it's under their account, and they just convert the quote into an order. So the admin for all of that is taken away. And now they've safely have the parts that they need and can be on their way. So
yeah. It's very interesting when you see how the origins of things really, how they come together, the origins of things and how they come together. And you were trying to solve one problem, then you're like, oh, we get to this point, and if we just add e-commerce, that's even better. And now you're talking about how adding the roles and thinking of how you better serve the customer with e-commerce with an e-commerce solution by doing this and giving people certain abilities is really cool, because the applications are really mind-boggling. First of all, I said here, my brain just rolls into, because you look at things, you just look across the board, you go, okay, CNC machines, you look at snow plows, you look at whatever you're building, really right. Whatever you're building, that's a larger kind of OEM purchase or OEM kind of product. And it really is cool how you can drastically change the way that after the sale support and service is handled.
Yeah. And I would, it's so interesting too, because we solve for the catalogs. Now you're getting safely to the parts that you need. Now you can add them to your shopping cart. You can create an order, check out, you're done. And then we went further and said, okay, now they need access to that purchase history so that they don't have to call customer support to know when the product is coming, when it's shipped, their tracking information. So you just keep chipping away at all the reasons they called your customer support to free up the customer support from some of those tactical routine activities, so that they could be moved off and working on maybe some of the data analysis that can come with an e-commerce site, or they can be answering the more challenging problems. Because I'll tell you, the challenging problems, and this was true for us in Bucyrus too, you had got so many emails, faxes, and phone calls a day, and that you were getting to as many as you could. And the easy ones were the ones you took care of the fastest. And usually that was price and availability, create the order, create the quote, and just on to the next one. Well, the ones where it was challenging to truly identify the right part, and you needed somebody maybe in technical support or an interpreter to go and look through the data, get an engineer. So the delays and all of that, that's where time was missed and customers would become very unsatisfied. So you're able to give a better customer experience when true challenges come up, and they will. Aftermarket support is all about solving problems, right? It doesn't mean all your problems go away. But it helps ease the process of doing business with you for all the routine activities, for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible, because I think about, the system and when you look at there are so many additional challenges that you're going to be able to look at and help customers solve in these things, that relate back to the kind of Bucyrus stuff. And when you think about operating hours or just, and if I, the customer, could update my operating hours in the system every so often on these kind of service things that you have to provide. There's just so many different things you can do. It's really cool. Mind boggling. So let's switch over a little bit to the e-commerce part of this, because, the e-commerce came out of this, but really, as you move into e-commerce, there are things that you can do in e-commerce that that's more difficult to do in traditional sales. And B, there's some some different advantages and challenges to e-commerce. So what are some of the things that you see that adding the e-commerce and going from more traditional sales based support in aftermarket sales and moving that more onto an e-commerce platform? What are some of the things that you really see companies enjoying and benefits from that?
Yeah, the first place I would start is the ability to be proactive. Okay. These aftermarket departments, no question, they are bombarded with things from their customers all day long. And you could have the best intentions that you want your customer service reps to be able to talk about, if they're asking for this, see if they also need these parts. First, many of those customer service people just don't even know the equipment well enough to know how to make those relationships, right? So, maybe there's a new product upgrade, or you're running a promotion in a given month, or maybe you have some aged inventory and you're trying to turn your aged inventory. These things, while you might talk to your customer service team about them, again, they're so busy that they rarely have an opportunity to know, does this opportunity fit with this customer and the equipment that they own? So they just don't have time to be proactive. In a selling tool like e-commerce, where you have the ability to do promotions and product recommendations like bundling, upselling, cross-selling, essentially it's the suggestive selling based on what a customer is looking for that is very proactive. Because you get to put all of that into the system and automate it. So when they are looking for that bearing, the seals, nuts, and bolts that go with that bearing are also offered to the customer, where again, your customer service rep who's been in the role for a year, never even seen that drag line operating, they wouldn't know.
They don't know that needs to go with it. Yeah.
That's right. So you get to leverage the value, in every business you have, I'll say a Bob, right? So Bob knows the equipment really well. He's probably been with your company as a manufacturer for 20, 25, maybe 30 years. And he can rattle off SKUs. He doesn't just know today's SKU. He knows what it was 10 years ago. Right? But you need to take all that information that Bob has and get it somewhere so that it can be a benefit to all your customers, and we're not all relying on Bob and his knowledge and what's up here. So that proactive is one thing that we have found customers get to benefit from.
And when you talk about that, I'm sitting here thinking about that same system that helps that end customer that wants to do it by e-commerce see that also helps the human interaction if they want to call you, because your inside customer service people really, to be efficient, should be on a similar screen, seeing similar things because then they become a lot smarter. It's almost like
Amen.
you put EI in them or AI in them, and you just increase their intelligence on that piece of equipment, and they didn't even realize it. But then in a distribution model, you've just given that intelligence then to the people at the distribution. That's not what they've learned through tribal knowledge or anything else. It's direct from the manufacturer to the distributor. So
Yes.
your quality of information overall at that service level is much higher, because we're using a common system that is going, okay, Dave or Sue, you need this part for this shovel. It's like, you need these other 3 parts too. And by the way, you better order this kind of oil. We don't stock it, but you're going to need that too, and you just give them all that kind of stuff so they understand and make them successful.
Right.
Just because you use that information to upgrade everyone's knowledge throughout the chain, because we're talking about e-commerce, but this really gives the human interaction a much higher level of service as well.
Yeah. And that touches on something else that you get to do with a tool like ours, which is several different levels of personalization, right? So most of the companies that we're working with have a group of customers. These are the installed base owners of your equipment. So they already have accounts with you.
Yeah.
Typically, they're logging in with their credentials. The beautiful thing about that is you can assign the equipment they own to that account. So they're not looking at the noise of all the units you've ever built and have to go search through all of the units.
Yeah.
Nope. They're seeing the specific, if they have a fleet of equipment, that's what they see. And so they can safely go in and look at their equipment. They can favorite parts. They can favorite machines. They can set up shopping lists. So if whether it's a dealer who comes back regularly and does a stock order, maybe the stock order is for consumables in 1 month, and every 3 months they do other types of safety stock type orders. So now they have these shopping lists. So they're not hunting and pecking and finding what they need. Once they've established, hey, this is what we need from this manufacturer on a regular basis, all they have to do is push their shopping list to the shopping cart and check out. And now it's easy for them. Auto reorder. So now you're personalizing with the ability for them to auto reorder. Similar type of concept, but now the order is just going through on a regular basis. So the levels of personalization that you can do, because you're now in an e-commerce environment where you know the account, you know what equipment they own, you know their pricing, you know what region of the business they're in. All of this becomes very powerful. And then the beauty is all the data that you're capturing when your customers are coming and using your site. So I say this all the time, but there is no greater level of data that you can get than having an e-commerce platform today for aftermarket and equipment manufacturers. We sliced and diced our data at Bucyrus to really get finite and look for opportunities, whether they were margin opportunities, growth potential opportunities, even things that were in our industry that we might not manufacture, but were accessories to the industry we were in, so that we could be a third-party supplier for that.
Yeah.
So, but the data that you get on the customers who are doing business, particularly, and you and I have talked about this, what are they searching for and automatically buying? Every time they come to your site, maybe they don't even use the search bar because, again, they're using their shopping list or they favorited. They're just checking out. They're consistently buying. They're not checking price. It's like every time they need it, they come to you for it. Well, if that's the case, those are opportunities to raise the price, right? And we always look for where are the areas where we can raise prices rather than, we're going to raise 5% across the board. And then maybe we have some parts that start falling out because that's no longer an attractive price point, right? The other thing you see is all of the searches that are happening on your e-commerce site, and then they're not buying. So that search to order hit rate, if you say, okay, they've been searching in the last 3 months for these parts, and maybe it's 10 are rising to the top, go evaluate those 10. Did you have inventory for the 10? If you didn't, a nice first step is just try to put some inventory on the shelf and see if that creates the conversion, right? So
Yeah.
now likely people are going to come back and search in the next 3 months. Now, by having inventory, did you get the sale? If
Yeah.
you didn't, so you've corrected inventory, that's going to tell you that there's probably something wrong with your price. People are still searching for it and they're not buying it, and you have it on hand. Because in our world, equipment and aftermarket parts, availability of product does sell. We see it all the time. Usually most people are not planning. As much as we tell them to plan for their future maintenance, most are reacting to failures that are happening with the equipment, and they need those products quickly. So you have them, you sell them. If you don't, you may miss out if there's an alternative supplier that can help them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so cool, because I think that you touched on a few things here about that, and the one that I didn't realize until we were talking earlier this week about it is really how this data that you're gaining from the e-commerce allows you to really understand A, what your customers want and maybe you don't have, B, that your customers want and you probably have opportunities for price increases. Or on the other too, if it's something that people search a lot and they don't ever buy, and there is inventory, maybe you need to look at, do we have room to get our prices more in line if there's other opportunities for them to buy from other places? So it's really interesting. But the one thing that talking today really opened my eyes on was the fact that you can really significantly upgrade your knowledge level of your entire support staff by doing this, because your service person in the field just got smarter. Your customer service person just got smarter. The distributors just got smarter. Your repair person that's in it's pervasive throughout the company by the data, the way you utilize the data.
Yeah, and you're right. Training is a big challenge as we have more of the baby boomers who are moving out. And there's going to be a great exit here as we get into 2025 through 2028. A lot of retirement of those people that carry that. I think, they called them oak trees or something in Caterpillar. Those were the people that had been there a long time, had roots and everything else, right?
Yeah.
But as you get in these generational groups who move around from company to company, they're going to spend a short period of time. If you can keep them there longer and give them a great career and show them and keep educating them and showing them opportunities and have a digital way for them to learn, that is the way in which they do learn. You're helping them help your customers in a way that's very different than historically what we've been able to do as OEMs. So the training aspect, that comes up all the time. And especially today where there's a talent gap. Many manufacturers are struggling to bring in talent. And if you don't have tools like Equip, which is the solution we offer, then you're missing out on a very visual way to help these people quickly understand your products and what they do.
Now listen, and we've got a few minutes here before we wrap up, but I want to cover this one topic because we talked about it a little bit, and I didn't realize this from a sales standpoint and a business standpoint of both top line and profitability. Do you see that when they implement these kind of systems that they're able to grow their sales and the profitability, or what really happens when they do that? Because I'm curious about that, because it's a sizable investment, no doubt. But when if you're we talked about the training thing, and I think that's just phenomenal what that would do to consistency of that across an organization, and that's going to drive dollars. But what are you guys seeing as you implement systems like this across industries that you're driving top line and profitability in these things?
Absolutely. And I will say that the transition to e-commerce is a transition. So
Yeah.
manufacturers should not expect the moment they turn on their e-commerce site that everybody comes, right? And that's just not, many times your customers won't even know that it's quite available to them yet until they need that next interaction with you.
Yeah.
So there's time in this. What we find is that, manufacturers who make this first available to their distribution network have high levels of adoption, and efficiency grows everywhere.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this, and it's true for both when you sell to a distributor or you're selling direct or you're doing a mixed channel and offering both, is that because your pricing is coming out of the system as standard pricing, and there's no mediator in between, whether that be the salesperson or the customer service person. So there's no accepting of the customer's PO, which might have a price point that's slightly lower than yours, but people are just accepting it and putting it in the system. When they enter those orders at the standard pricing that you have, even if it's their pricing, typically the online orders have a higher margin than the offline orders. So that is a level of profitability that we see right there. And you should expect that. Additionally, because of some of these things that we talked about, like bundling, product recommendations, and other things, there's new ways to increase that average order value. So, of course, every manufacturer is trying to find new ways to benefit from existing clients. And e-commerce can certainly help you with that. So your average order value is going up because you're offering additional products. Think about even that 3D drawing. So I'm safely in the assembly. I know I need the motor. And maybe the gasket around the connection to where that motor fits is a little flimsy and should be shot. Well, because I'm in that 3D drawing, I see the gasket number right there too. So I'm not just going to buy the motor. I'll buy the bolts and nuts, and I'll buy the gasket, and I'll make some changes so that I fully can put it back together with some new components around it. Now, before, if they're just like, oh, my motor, it's Friday,
That's a great point.
Motor, get it on the, so they have the ability to add those additional items. So average order value goes up, order accuracy goes up, because customers aren't guessing, customer service departments aren't guessing, the integration to the ERP with the current part number, you're having fewer returns because of the accuracy goes up as well. So those are some very key profitability metrics that we see as more and more business transitions to e-commerce. And what you find is that when you start seeing these results as a business, is you say, whoa, well, if we could get people more over to e-commerce than going through these other channels and reserve those channels for other more critical activity or complex activities, it's better for our business. And you start getting momentum and people who are behind the e-commerce initiative, because e-commerce is still something new for many manufacturers. And some people on the sales team might view it as a threat, when in reality, it's an opportunity for everyone and should be considered an opportunity for the sales force as well, making their job much easier and giving them better opportunities to grow their own commissions as well.
Yeah, that's something, because when we started thinking about this conversation and I was preparing for it, I was thinking about, yes, it's nice to add the OEMs and, so it's ease for customer orders or whatever. But really, when you think about the way it can increase the intelligence of everyone that's involved with the system, I mean, that's massive. I think that's massive. And then when you talk about the ways that you can increase the order size and really the support to the customer, so they're getting everything they need. They don't have to, come back or order the wrong thing. It's really pretty incredible. And speed. Yeah.
Yeah. We expect everything now, right? Yeah. It's just the way that we are. So if you can free up even just a portion of your customer service department today and allow this self-service, because I love to talk about e-commerce systems as self-service portals where customers can go to get their information. They're not just ordering. It's not just a place for transactions. They're getting all that information around their equipment, any maintenance videos, any support documentation, any MSDS, any operators manuals. All of that is safely there. All my tracking information when my orders are coming, copies of my invoices, paying my invoice, right? Think about the level of calls and emails that are coming to your call to do that. And think about today when you can't find enough good people to staff, and customers, because of supply chain issues, are more frantic about when are my things coming, and they want to know things. If you had this portal for them to go and look at this detail, they wouldn't need to bombard your teams, and they could be focused on those supply chain issues. So much opportunity here.
It's super interesting when you start to look at it and how OEMs can really grow their aftermarket sales with e-commerce. And I talk about sales, but grow the the effectiveness of their support, and really enhance the brand by giving people the self-serve option, better service, and the way they can, because the data gets in the hands of the people that need it.
That's right. So for these OEMs, this becomes a big differentiator when the customer is thinking about that equipment has reached its useful life and now they need to replace. They need a new fleet of equipment, right? Are they going to go to the next guy, or are they going to come back to you because your service, your support, the tools that you have after you own the equipment are so valuable to them? They're not going to take the risk of moving to another alternative. They're coming back to you to give you the business again. So now you're not just winning on the aftermarket, you're also keeping that OE business and that next new piece of equipment. So that's the key behind all of this. Ultimately, it's not just an aftermarket sale, it's an OE sale too.
Is get the new product sales and then get the aftermarket right after it and keep the cycle going. So
you got it.
Kris, it's been so awesome to talk. I mean, we could spend another hour here easy or more, because it really is amazing the where this came from, how you guys saw a need and then stepped out and built this platform to be able to support it. So if people want to learn more about GenAlpha, learn about what things are going on, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, please go to genalpha.com. That's GenAlpha.com. We have a ton of resources out there. Not only do we want to sell our e-commerce platform and help manufacturers grow, but we are constantly putting out content to help these companies in all areas of aftermarket. That really is our focus. So we've got a newsletter. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can do that. You can also find us on LinkedIn at GenAlpha Technologies.
Awesome. Well, Kris, thanks so much for being here today. And thanks everyone for listening. Again, this Faces of Business with Kris Harrington from GenAlpha. Thanks so much. I appreciate you stopping by and sharing your knowledge on growing OEM manufacturing sales with e-commerce. And I hope everyone listening enjoyed it. Thanks for being here. You bet.
Appreciate
Have
it.
a great evening, everyone.